Melissa, we just contradict each other. Like,
yeah, we did. I know. You're just like, no, I'm not part of it. I'm like, yes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We have a panel today. I've never done one of these before. I'm super excited to have these other fellow YouTubers here. We have Melissa of Hat to Hem, and we have Marty of Scraps and Sequins. So introduce yourselves and tell us about your channel, what you do. And today we are going to be talking about the wedding dresses that they made. So, but first, you obviously make things other than wedding dresses. That's not, your normal thing. So tell us a little bit about yourselves.
I'll start. I'm Marty. My channel is Scraps and Sequins. I did a lot of cottagecore in like the past year stuff. I'm going to be transitioning into a little bit more historical, specifically Italian Renaissance and like modern ball gowns in the new year. So I'm kind of excited about this change, and it's going to be super exciting.
I'm excited to see all that.
Yeah.
I really am. I'm just like, as soon as you announce, I'm like, oh, that's going to be so good.
I've been collecting a pile of fabric, and I'm like, I have to finish everything on my list before I can like even pre-wash this, and it's been killing me.
I know that feeling. Oh my goodness. Oh, hi, I'm Melissa Keith. I'm from Hat to Hem. I have been really focusing on doing commissions on my channel, but I'm hoping to shift gears soon. And I want to start making projects that I feel passionate about. And usually that means not necessarily cosplay, but just recreating costumes from books or from stage shows or movies, or making stuff that's inspired by it. So I'm really hoping that I'll be able to make more of that soon.
Yay!
I want to do more of that too. I want you to do it. I'm just like, I love this.
Exactly.
All right,
We don't
so
girl over each other's work. I think that's the best thing about these friendships.
yes,
Exactly.
love the support system. Love it. All right, so speaking of support system, I'm getting married, and I am in the process of making my wedding dress. I bought fabric, and then I'm scared to cut it. So, so please give me your advice. So like, why did you decide to make your own wedding dress? What do I need to know before I actually like cut into the fabric of my wedding dress? Like, advice, please, help. Everything that I need to know before I make it.
I'm so sorry, my dog is barking.
That's okay.
I decided to make my own wedding dress because it was right at the beginning of when I decided I no longer wanted to buy clothing, and I wanted to have everything I have, all like make, be handmade. I also didn't like the cost of wedding dresses and did not want to pay for that, even though I paid in materials. I ended up paying a lot more than I expected to.
Mm-hmm.
But when you find the perfect thing, you find the perfect thing, right?
Yeah.
But also, like, I'm sure Melissa will have the same thing. If I hadn't have made my wedding dress, everyone would have just assumed that I did, because I have been sewing since I was 8 years old. And it's always been a thing of like, well, eventually for this big occasion in my life, I'm just going to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel like a little bit of pressure about that, but also there was like a strange amount of pressure from like certain people like to not make it. So
my mom, so when because my husband and I had like a whirlwind thing, right? We went from like officially dating to married within 9 months.
Oh, wow.
And so when my mom and I, when we were in like the pre-engagement negotiations, my mom was just like, so are you going to go wedding dress shopping to at least figure out what you want?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, because I knew what I wanted. Well, I thought I did, and then I didn't. We can talk about that later. But like, I feel like everyone should, I really missed out on that opportunity of at least going shopping to like see, oh, I actually really do like this neckline or this waistline or this fullness of skirt. I really feel like I missed out on that opportunity. So like, even if you're just going wedding shopping to like figure out what you like before you make your own, or to like get a backup, I think both of those are really good ideas.
Yeah.
I actually did go wedding dress shopping, just because at that point I knew I was making my dress. I had an idea of what I wanted, but I wanted that experience And also, I'm an only child, and I wanted my mom to have that experience.
Yeah.
So we still went, and actually, it wasn't just my mom, it was a whole entourage. I have a large extended family, and a lot of them came with us. It was a thing, but I still wanted to try on wedding dresses, and like I tried on, a couple that I was serious about. There was one that I absolutely loved, and I'm like, all right, if it doesn't work out, I want this one.
Yeah.
But there were others where I'm just like, all right, I want to try that on for fun. I just want to see what that silhouette looks like on me. And like at one point, my one cousin, just to break the tension, she just found like this most ridiculous dress that she could find. She's like, try this one. I'm like, sure. So we were very nice to the shop assistant, and luckily it was not one of those places that is done on commission. So I didn't have the guilt,
Yeah.
of wasting somebody's time. But it was a really fun experience. And it was also very, it kind of reassured me that I was making the right choice by making my dress, because twice the brides on either side of me came out wearing the same dress.
Oh.
At the exact same time. It happened twice. And I'm like, all right, I made the right choice.
Yeah, because
And they just were looking at each other like, it was great.
It
was
when
pretty
you make
great.
your own dress, like that's yours. Like no one else in the world has that. And I think that's another kind of reason, like, why someone might want to make their own dress is because the originality factor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a factor for me.
It wasn't for me. I almost ended up with a blue dress.
Oh.
Because, so like context, my husband and I basically eloped. Our wedding became more about who we weren't inviting versus who we were inviting. Just because we wanted to keep it really small and like intimate. And we only had about 18 people at our wedding. And the only reason how come I made a dress is because I wanted pictures. Otherwise I wouldn't have bothered. And so I almost ended up with a blue dress, and I forget where I was going with this.
Originality factor.
Oh yeah, so originality wasn't a big deal for me, because as long as I was wearing a dress and we got pictures on the day, I didn't really care.
Okay.
So my dress, like I haven't shown you guys pictures of my dress, but it's actually like stupidly simple.
I like your dress. The pictures I've seen, I'm just like,
It's that lace. I paid money for that lace, and it made the dress.
It really did.
So
that's funny. I had a completely different wedding experience than you, because we planned for about a year and a half, and we had 130 people, and over 100. I counted over 100 of them were family, like first cousins and aunts and uncles. Like it was like we cut off second cousins, kids, all that, and we still had over 100 family members at our wedding. So there was, and like we had so much go wrong in the 6 months leading up to the wedding. First year, fine, everything went great. We had like everything planned out, like within the first 3 months, it was great. Then the last 6 months happened, and it started out with the caterer that was affiliated with the place we got married at going out of business. Like effective, like we got the email on Tuesday and it was effective Saturday, and we were getting married in 6 months in like height of wedding season, because we got married in May. And I was like, what? So, and then we almost lost the venue because of that. We did lose the rehearsal dinner space. We lost the day of coordinator. We lost like pretty much everything except for the cake and the officiant. So it was a lot. Luckily the venue did stay open, but we didn't know for about a month if that was going to happen or not. I'm trying to like call places. I'm like, do you have anything available this week? We already sent out the invitations. So that was fun. That was a lot of fun. It did work out, but it was stressful. But I mean, by the time my wedding day was happening, I'm just like, it's all good. It's good. Whatever happens. I had 2 bridesmaids go missing at one point, and I'm just like, they'll find their way to the venue, or they won't. It's fine.
I had 2 bridesmaids total.
It was crazy. It was like I went through so much stress. I was like forced to relax at that point. I'm like, everything I could have done, I've done. It's fine. It's all out of my hands now. So maybe not. I mean, I would have preferred not having a crisis, but if you have one, it could work for you, because it might make you relax. Like I was even nervous day of my wedding. I've seen like this huge breakfast. My bridesmaids were like, I can't eat. I'm like, I want more eggs. I'll be right back.
When people say that they've planned their weddings for like 6 months to a year, I'm just like, we planned mine in an afternoon.
I had a lot of my I had a lot of my details pre-planned, if that makes sense, before we got engaged, because like I knew within 6 months that I was gonna marry my husband. And it took us a little bit longer to get engaged, but like I was like kind of collecting ideas for both on what my dress looked like and like what the theme of the wedding was and all this stuff. And I had a good idea of what I wanted. So then when the first, like, this wedding was pretty much mostly planned, except for like we had to pick out a venue. And then we chose the only one that we toured because my husband fell in love with it. I'm like, done, we're good. And then everything just completely fell apart about 9 months later.
Yeah.
Fun times.
So you mentioned like
but your day's gonna be great, Marie.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. There's just like a pandemic going on that as I've been planning, which has made me slightly stressed, but that's fine.
It'll be fine. It'll be beautiful. I'm so excited to see your pictures.
Oh,
Me too.
you. So how did you
the venue? I'm excited.
I love my venue.
The venue was gorgeous. I really can't wait for these pictures.
So how did y'all decide on like the design for your dress? Because like when you decide to make your own, like you can literally make anything. Like the world is yours. So how did you like, were you saying like it's your venue, it's like this vision that you've always had in your head, or did like you go and try on those wedding dresses and then decide like, wait, I thought I loved like the big poofy cupcake dress, but then I want like a short dress or something? Like, how did that happen? Take me through it.
Well, it was hard to narrow down my ideas at first.
Mm-hmm.
But what I ended up drawing inspiration from was the time periods I like and the movies I like, if that makes sense. Because we were having a fairly geeky wedding. It was a book themed wedding, and we had like movie scores, and we had like a Anne Green Gables Room Review themed engagement photo shoot. So I knew I wanted to kind of carry all that over. So I ended up trying to go between like Victorian and Edwardian.
Okay.
So like
I see that. Yeah.
I wanted my skirt to be very Edwardian and everything, but I still wanted a bustle. So I ended up having a detachable train that was bustled up at the top that I could take off and then keep that nice smooth Edwardian silhouette. But then I wanted to have a modern bodice because I didn't want it to be at the point where I wanted it to look fairly normal for the guests that didn't really appreciate all this stuff the way we did. I still wanted to look normal, but I wanted the people who knew what I was going for to be all like, oh, look at that, she did it,
Yeah.
So it was trying to find that it was pretty much history bounding, I guess. It was a little bit of the history before, and that was even before history bounding was a thing, because we got married in 2018. But I ended up just kind of grabbing inspiration by that. I'm like, how can I do like a nod to history while also not being too over the top with it? But I mean, if you want to go over the top, that's fantastic. But it wasn't something that I personally wanted. So that was kind of where I stood with that. And this is gonna sound a little crazy, the rest of my ideas all came from like what I would envision as a little girl. I'm like, all right, when I was 5 and drawing my future wedding dress, what did I picture? So I went back to that, and like my wedding dress ended up having off the shoulder sleeves because that was how I always drew the sleeves for my princesses, because I was a big fan of the Brandy Cinderella and I loved her off the shoulder sleeves. So I'm like, that's what a princess looks like. That's what I always want. So I ended up giving myself sleeves that were inspired by that, based off of the drawings I made when I was little. So that was kind of how I came across my design.
Oh, I love that.
I think that's super cute. For my dress, so we got married in 2019. That's when I thought my entire wardrobe was going to be vintage, and then I realized vintage was too uppity for me. It's not my vibe. But I definitely I love the vintage like fitted bodice A-line skirt silhouette. I always have. It's what flatters my body really well. So I knew that's what I wanted. I had a friend that got married a couple years beforehand, and she had a T-length dress, and I was just like, that fits you so well. And I'm like, I want a T-length dress. So I think that's kind of how like it came about. And like how it started, and then it just kind of like evolved from there.
Very cool. Very cool. So did you decide on a white dress?
Yes,
right?
I ended up I kept looking at like doing, because I knew I wanted florals and I knew I wanted like the fit flare silhouette. Like those were the two things I was dead set on. So I kept looking at like embroidered fabric and like just blue florals. I think I looked at like pink florals at one point, where it's just like, well, if I do a color, like, do I do a really subtle pastel one? And then I realized that like it wouldn't really feel wedding to me if it wasn't white. And if I was doing this for the pictures, I might as well do it for the pictures. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one of the hardest things with making my own dress, was how do I make this not feel like a costume?
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was a costume. I was literally doing it for the single event.
That's
Like,
true.
I'm doing this for the pictures. What do I want my children to see when they see these pictures? Was literally what went into me making my dress.
I like that.
That's super cool. So how was making the physical dress? Like expectations, reality, like how did that go?
I want to start. So I worked in a tailor shop until we got married. So I had access to some like pretty awesome machines that I like could use when my manager wasn't there and on my lunch break. So I actually have like really nice hems on like my circle skirts and things because I was able to use those fancy machines. But it was also really interesting because like I ended up just taking a brown paper bag into work, and that's where my wedding dress was. And like on my lunch break, I would still be like, I would like drape it on the dress forms that we had in the back and all that stuff. And so all of the ladies, like, they knew I was getting married and they're just like, oh, it's looking so good and whatnot. I ended up quitting about a month before the wedding, but I still had work left to do. So I was just doing it at home. I have this terrible thing of getting projects 90% done before I try them on.
You know that feeling.
Yeah. And this is before I figured out my block patterns. So I would be 90% done before I even knew if it really fit me. Because I also don't do mock-ups. So I like, best advice if you are making your own wedding dress, whenever you try it on, make sure you have a fitting buddy for no other reason than to help you get in and out of your dress. Don't be like me, who tried on my wedding dress right after my brother left for work, because we were sharing an apartment at the time. And the zipper got stuck. He had just left for work. So I am stranded in my apartment and I couldn't get the zipper undone because I made the dress too tight. And so it was just the right amount of tension in the right spot on the zipper. I ended up texting my friend who works from home and was just like, hey, are you available? I need help. I'm stuck in my wedding dress. So I ended up, I think there's a picture on my Instagram somewhere, unless I deleted it, of like me like pouting in my wedding dress because I'm stuck. Anyway, I ended up getting in my car, driving the 15 minutes over to her house so she could unzip me, and then driving back home.
Wow.
I ended up replacing the bodice. It fit beautifully, but I got stuck in my dress.
That is a great story.
That's fantastic.
So make sure you always have help so you can get out of your dress.
And that's why I didn't go with anything that had to be up my back. I didn't do like a zipper or a lace up. I ended up making my bodice like the most convoluted thing in the world just so I can get in and out of it on my own. The problem was nobody else knew how to do it. So I'm getting into my wedding dress in front of, my mom and my, everybody. And I'm like doing all this random stuff and they're just staring at me like, all right, I can't help. But yeah, my wedding dress ended up, it went down it closed from the front, but there was a panel that went over it to cover it. Mm-hmm. And it was very convoluted because like one part went this way and that part went that way, and it was a whole thing. And it's I wouldn't recommend doing it, but I was able to get in and out on my own, so that helped.
So how long did it like take y'all to make them?
6 months.
6 months? Oh wow. Okay, yeah. I need to start now. Like,
Oh,
I need to cut into that fabric.
we got engaged end of December and we got married the end of March. So 3 months, but we finished the beading on my dress the day before the wedding. There's actually a picture of us in the Airbnb with like beading my dress. Like my aunts came, like a couple of my aunts came. And like they showed up and the first thing I said was, "Hey, do you want to help bead my dress?"
Wow. That's
So there's like 4 of us all like have different parts of my dress on our laps. To be fair, I had a like I will consider this done goal, which was like most of the way done before we left. And then I had like left to go because we didn't get married where we locally live. Like before we left to go to the wedding. And then I had like a stretch goal. Like if we could get this far, that would be awesome. But we ended up getting the whole thing done while we watched movies.
I'm glad y'all got it done.
Yeah, that's good.
That's how I always feel like I'm like, I'll get things mostly done and then I'm just like, wait, I want to do this. And then it's, you know, the night before the event and I'm just like up till 3 a.m. and I'm just like, I can't do that like with my wedding dress. Cause like, you know, you have like the rehearsal and like all of the other stuff going on like the day before where I'm like, I physically like, that can't be, you know.
So you need to set like goals in stages. You're just like, okay, so this is like worst case scenario. This is when the dress is done. Best case scenario, this is when the dress is done. And then have 3 stages in between.
That's really smart.
What helped
So
me
that way
is,
you're like, as long as you hit your worst case scenario, then like you're good.
Okay.
what helped me is I had a bridal shoot scheduled 2 weeks before my wedding. So that was my due date. So it was like, all right, as long as I get it done by that last 2 weeks, focus on everything else. And there was a lot to focus on. So I'm just like, 2 weeks, we are good. We're done. And I actually finished the dress, I think, a week before that, which was amazing and unheard of for me. But I was able to get it done. I would say if you're doing any kind of beading, start now.
Yeah.
Because I beaded some lace on mine and it was totally not worth it. You can't see in any of the pictures. But I knew it was there and I knew I worked hard on that. But I had an interesting experience sewing my dress because I actually did it on the house that I'm in now, but I guess now I'm thinking about it, it took me 5 months to sew my wedding dress because we moved in at the end of December. Well, we didn't move in. We bought the house and had settlement and everything at the end of December. And then I started sewing the dress in this house before we moved in. We didn't move in until after the wedding because my husband was working an hour away and just wasn't worth it, gas wise. So I ended up cutting out the dress, sewing it here. I remember I was working on beading in this room right over there when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Because I heard all these fireworks, like, you know, just celebration outside. I'm like, oh, I guess they won.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was nice because then I had plenty of room to spread out, and you do need a lot of space when you're working on a wedding dress. It's a lot of skirt sometimes.
Especially if it's full length or you have a train, like my little studio like doesn't even handle like T-link circle skirts. Like I have to go downstairs and like cut those on the open space. So planning for the right amount of room for like what your project is important.
Yeah.
And also make sure you order some extra fabric because I didn't. So I ended up running out of fabric for my bodice and I had to use a different one that had I had to use like the underskirt fabric for part of my bodice. I'm just like, it's fine, no one's gonna notice. And nobody did. But it would make sure you order like a little bit, order 2 yards extra if you need to.
Yeah.
That way if you need to recut things like I did, you still have enough. So
that's like
you don't want to be a week before your wedding and realizing, oh no. You know?
Yes, and then like my fear is like, especially the lace I got, because I'm like, well, what if that place doesn't have the lace anymore? And then like I like mess it up so bad that I like have to just go buy like more. But I got like extra of it.
You want to be careful.
Because my mom was like, we're just getting more. And the lady was so nice. She gave us like a discount on it. It was lovely.
Oh, I like that.
It was so nice. I was like, thank you. So anything other like wedding stories, advice, like, anything else someone or me needs to know before like making that first cut? Like, did your process like change? So did your vision change from the time you cut it out to the time you like wore it down like to your ceremony?
I think mine pretty much stayed the same. I had, like I said, to alter my bodice design a little bit because I ran out of fabric. But for the most part, it was, I had a clear idea of what I wanted, and I ended up going for it, and it was really nice. If you don't have a clear idea yet, but there's certain aspects where you're sticking with. Like, I had an underskirt to my wedding dress. I knew I wanted it that. I knew I needed that. So, like, I was able to cut that out even if I wasn't 100% sure on everything else, because by the time I cut into the chiffon, I was set and I knew what I wanted. But, you're on the fence for certain things sometimes. So I worked on the things that I knew were set in stone first, and then I was able to move on and get everything else done. So, I would say make sure you give yourself enough time, and be okay if your vision does change a little bit, because that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
I think my biggest advice would be make a mock-up, so you don't get stuck in your dress. And then I would say like set stages, like I said before. And then I think my third one would be like, just don't settle. Like, understand that like you may have to, and that's why you set your goals and your stretch goals. But if there's something like a detail that you absolutely want on your dress, like I wanted florals and I wanted a circle skirt and I wanted a fitted bodice, don't settle for anything else because you're not going to be happy with it.
Agreed.
Did you feel like you had to settle for any parts of your dresses? Like you ran out of time, or like, oh, I wish I had done this differently?
Yeah.
Melissa, we just contradict each other. Like,
yeah, we did. I know. You're like, no, like, no. I'm like, yes. Yeah, I don't do any kind of modern sewing. My sewing is all strictly in the historical side. Every now and then, as a favor, I'll do something a little more modern, but it's not my area. I wish that my bodice had been a little bit nicer, a little bit better fitted, but that was just the result of the materials I had and time I had and the ability I had at that point. So I wish my bodice fit me a little bit better, but that's okay. Nobody was really I think people were more focused on the skirt than the bodice anyway.
And also, so you always hold like your bouquet, like that like covers half your bodice like half the time anyway.
My bouquet's right here.
Mine's in the garage.
Wait, how did y'all preserve your bouquets? I need to know this.
Artificial flowers.
Oh.
So mine are actually wooden flowers.
How cool.
Yeah, mine are I bought them online. I think they're from California. They got here in like October. My wedding wasn't until May. So there's this giant box in my parents' dining room for months. But I ordered my flowers well in advance. So they were one less thing to worry about, and I was happy with them. And now everybody was able to keep them. Yeah. As you can see, this is actually usually like in the middle of my dining room table.
Aww.
So I get to see that every day, which is really nice. And
I love that.
My bridesmaids all have their bouquets, and we have all little centerpieces. My mom and my mother-in-law, they both have little centerpieces that they have around their houses. And most importantly, the mother of the bride did not have an allergy attack, which was what I was worried about. So, no allergy attack. The flowers looked good throughout the rest of the day, and they still look good. So I was happy with my choice.
Very cool.
Yeah, my mom actually made that decision for me. She's just like, oh, hey, by the way, choose one of these. And then she sent me a link. That's how casual my wedding was. My mom did 90% of it. If I ever have a child, well, like if I ever have a daughter and she wants a big wedding, I don't know how I'm going to handle it because we eloped.
Yeah. The only choice my parents made for me, well, two choices, and they were both made by my dad, even who has no opinion on any of this usually. And his one opinion was the wedding cake should be white. I'm like, okay, because we were watching a wedding cake TV show, and he was like, that looks silly. Wedding cake should be one color, and that should be white. I'm like, okay, Dad. And then the other choice, my dad doesn't drink at all. His choice was, you're having an open bar. I'm like, okay. He goes, if you don't have an open bar, people are going to go to the other room to drink, and you don't want that. You want them to stay in your wedding. I'm like, okay, sounds good. So funny enough, my husband also had, the only thing he had a strong opinion on was also on the cake. And that was that we have buttercream icing and not fondant. So
Cream
that was the
icing
only,
is so good.
we all know where their priorities were. So
The cake.
We didn't have a cake.
it was a pretty awesome cake.
My
didn't have
mom insisted that we had a cake at one of our receptions. So, like, for context, my husband and I don't live around family, but we chose to get married close to where we live. But then we have receptions where our families are from. So at the reception with my mom's family, she like was absolutely adamant. She's like, you guys are going to have a cake. Pick a flavor. So that's the only reason how come we had a cake.
What did you go with?
We went with I think it was like a lemon, because my grandma makes a really good like lemon pound cake. So that's what we had. And it was really really funny because we were setting up for the reception. And all of a sudden, like my mom and my grandma are both like having panic attacks. I'm like, what's going on? And apparently the cake was falling over. And they couldn't stabilize it. It was a little cake. It was like a 4-tier cake, but it was falling over. And so we went into the kitchen and I'm just like, okay, what can we do? And we tried dowels and it didn't work. And we tried like all like because my grandma used to make cakes for weddings. So we tried all the things. And finally I'm just like, Mom, it's not like we're feeding everyone that's coming this cake. She's like, sighs and takes the top 2 layers off and sets them aside. And we have a 2-layer wedding cake.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah, that's funny. I had something also almost fall apart at my wedding.
Oh.
I walked away for 1 minute to talk to the photographer when we were putting the flowers up because, you know, no day of coordinator. We had to do all the decorating ourselves. Not the men, just the bride and the bridesmaids were putting up flowers and all kinds of stuff. My mother-in-law was helping, my mom was helping, but like all the men were like, we see them arrive and they're all like, we're all like, oh, good for them. But anyway,
Yeah, they don't care.
yeah, it's like, but there was a flower arrangement above the arch under which we got married, and I was about to put it up, and I had to walk away and talk to the photographer a second, and I walked back, and I don't know why my bridesmaids did this, and I feel bad for throwing them under the bus, but rather than like zip tied a certain way, they made like a chain of zip ties, and they put on that way, so that the whole flower, instead of it being like this, it was like this. It just kept falling. And one of my bridesmaids, who was clearly not involved in that choice, she's looking at it, and she's very, you know, she's very sciencey minded. She's awesome, but she was also very sick. She had like a 100-degree fever that day. So the fact she even thought of this is amazing. But she's looking at it, she goes, I can fix this, but I need a fork. I'm like, okay, we'll get you a fork. They ended up stealing a fork from the kitchen. And he like wedged it in there in such a way that it held the centerpiece up. So that was fun.
Okay.
I love
Yeah,
that,
I'm
like,
like, I
random,
trust you to fix it. I'm gonna go work on something else. Yeah,
I love like
need a
the
fork.
random one-liner things that like people come up with that like just make events even more special. Like, I can fix this, I just need a fork. Like, that's gold.
I need to like embroider that on something for her. Something.
Yes.
A little cross stitch with a little fork on it, and that'll be a Christmas gift for her one day.
I love it.
Yeah, it was
like, I love
oh
it.
my god, it was awesome. She saved the day. So, and she's actually the bridesmaid I met my husband through. So yeah, the whole reason we were there was because of her anyway. And then she saved the day with the fork. So with over 100-degree fever.
Oh.
So I need to
I
put
owe her
like
a lot.
forks in like my like bag of things that I need to prevent disasters on my wedding day, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, just put a fork in.
Fork.
Like, I got a fork.
Yep.
A dingle hopper, if you will.
Exactly.
Just in case, you know. Gotta do your
Please.
hair.
Please get a photo of you in your gorgeous dress with your fork. Make this happen, please.
Yeah.
And just post it and be like, this is an inside joke. You're welcome, internet. If you
It's like a
didn't
good
watch
omen.
our wedding panel dress video, you won't know what it is. But if you did, you'll know.
You have your fork, you have your good omen, everything will go well.
I just like, now I have to have a fork. Like, it just needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's something borrowed, something old, something new,
Yeah.
something borrowed, something blue, and a penny in her shoe, and a fork.
And a fork.
Yeah.
We're adding
We need to
forks.
find our way to make that rhyme, I guess, but it works.
Did y'all do
Now
like
I
that
really
rhyme?
want to like embroider a fork into the lining of my wedding dress.
See, there you go. I like that. Maria, to answer your question, I did do
Yeah.
all that. I mean, obviously the dress was new. My necklace, I think, was what was old because it was something that I had for a while. It was just a standard pearl necklace. My bracelet was borrowed from my bridesmaid, and I forgot to give it back to her for about 2 years. So, whoops. My something blue was a ribbon around the petticoat of my dress, which I made also. And then a friend of mine sent me a sixpence that she had gotten years ago, and she gave it to me to keep. And she said, maybe you can give this to your children one day. And I'm like, oh my God. So it was real, and she has since passed away, but having that part of her is so special to me. And I like that even though she wasn't at my wedding, she was part of it that way. But yeah, I had everything except the fork. Well, the fork was in the thing.
It was above you. Guarding,
was.
really.
It was looking down upon us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not do any of that. We have, like, my family has other traditions and things, like some are religious and some are not, that were more important to me. So that's what we did instead.
Oh, nice.
I think that's still nice.
Yeah, there's so many like
Weddings are about
traditions and
traditions.
stuff that come about during like weddings, like family traditions, faith traditions. Like it's just a very tradition time, and also a time where people are just like, I don't want to do any of that, and I want to do something like all my own, and it like kind of all gets wrapped into like one package, which is your wedding.
Exactly. You know, it's one kind of a tradition, kind of not, but I'm glad I did it, so I'm gonna suggest that if you have an ability to do something like this, you should. There was a picture from of my mom on her wedding day with my grandmother, and they were looking in a mirror together, and my mom and I recreated it for my wedding. So if you have a special image from your parents' wedding, I would highly recommend trying to recreate it because that's such a special moment.
Oh, it's so
It's so cute.
Oh, I have to go look at all my parents' wedding photos and be like,
I think it's fun. That's extra fun. Then you get to hear stories that you've never heard before. Like there's a picture of my mom's, actually no, not a picture. Every picture my mom's youngest sister is in, she's crying. Like she's just like, every single picture in the wedding, because that morning my mom says, I'm like, oh, it's so weird. I'm getting ready. I'm never going to live here anymore. And she just went, what? I don't remember how old she was, but I think there's 12 or 13 years between my mom and her youngest sister. So she was pretty young, and it didn't sink in. For some reason, she thought like, oh yeah, after the wedding, she's gonna come back here. She's gonna sleep in a room. It's fine.
yeah.
She didn't realize she was moving out. So she was just distraught the entire wedding.
Oh no.
So
Oh, that's really sweet, but
we'll
also
get this
sad.
started. Yeah, look for your parents' wedding album, get the stories. It's a good time.
My parents had been divorced for a couple of years by the time that we got married. So, like, looking through old photos just wouldn't have been the same for me. But
Definitely a different perspective there.
yeah,
Exactly.
a little bit.
That's
So,
kind
is
of
there
nice,
anything-
isn't it? Everybody has a different way to think of this.
Yeah.
And what traditions matter to you, which ones you want to put aside. That's one of the nice things about I think that's one of the nice things about a wedding or eloping or anything like that, is you get to kind of pick and choose what matters to you and kind of customize it to be your day. Because that's what's important. It's your day, you and your fiance. So you have to kind of remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there
And if anyone like tells you no, it has to be done this way, like you can just uninvite them. That's what we did.
I had one person, they're like, oh, when are you getting married? And I told them like, oh, it's this day. And they're like, that's inconvenient for me. I'm just like, I'm sorry? Like, don't come then?
Miss you.
We specifically did not tell people our wedding date until after it happened, because we had a lot of people inviting themselves to our wedding. Yeah.
So
Make your wedding yours, and if someone says that you should be doing things differently, uninvite them, because you don't need a party pooper at your wedding.
Yeah, only fun people.
Yeah, that's what out of town receptions are for.
I'm saying, yeah, like I didn't invite 100 family members to my wedding.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah,
We invited.
Mine was a family reunion at that point.
When we had our out of town receptions, like we were advertising the date of our out of town receptions, but we were not advertising the date of our wedding. So everyone was just like, "Oh yeah, we'll like go to the reception and whatnot." And like a lot of people assumed that we had gotten married like that weekend instead of like the 3 months prior. It was interesting.
I bet.
Like, nah, it's been a second. Just we didn't tell
like,
you.
No. Yeah. Because we got married in March, and then I'm pretty sure our receptions were in June. So, June or July. I don't remember which.
I'm doing the whole.
Hey, you get to keep celebrating. That's nice.
Yeah.
It was convenient.
Done.
Yeah. I think my guest list is about at like 150, 170. Because there are some people that we're inviting that we know just like aren't going to be able to come, or you have told us they're not going to be able to come, but like we're still sending them an invitation because like
yeah, we had to do that with certain family members. It's like, all right, we know they're not coming, but we want to send the invitation anyway, so they know they were invited. It's the etiquette around a wedding is
insane. Elope. I highly recommend eloping.
Well, I will say, like, one of the pros to making my dress that I haven't really mentioned yet was it helped to calm me down. Like, sewing your wedding dress would be an incredibly stressful experience, but sewing really kind of centers me, and like I have to focus on this. I'm able to kind of like turn my brain off for everything else and just focus on that. And with everything that we had to replan at the wedding because of the caterer, the being able to just kind of take a break, go into my otherwise empty house and just sew was really calming. And people focus on, I don't want that stress, but if sewing isn't stressful for you, or if it's the kind of stress you like, because there are certain amounts of stress that you kind of like, it was really nice. It was really helpful. And yeah, I have this special thing for my dress now, but it's also, it helped keep me calm during those last 6 months where everything was getting really hectic and awful. It was really nice having that calming element. And one other thing that was a kind of an unexpected perk was my wedding dress wasn't like this super precious thing I have to be careful with, It was kind of, I made it. It's fine. I make stuff. It's fine. My husband stepped on it while we were walking in, tore a hole in it. It's fine. It's fine. I got a nice picture of that too. Big hole. And then I was able to kind of goof around in it too. Like there's a picture of during the family photos, because again, a lot of family at this wedding. They were trying to get everybody to squeeze in, and my father-in-law just kind of laid on the floor at one point as a joke. And I just laid down with him in my full wedding dress, veil, everything. So I was able to really just kind of unwind and have fun. It wasn't like, I have to be super careful with this dress. I spent so much money on it. I did all this, and then, it obviously it's precious, but it's not like my precious, I need to be careful with it. I was able to just relax. And I think that was an unexpected perk.
I'm gonna second that one. So because I knew I had pre-washed all this stuff in my washing machine, I knew that OxyClean would take anything out of this dress. I knew my dress and what the fabrics could take. At my reception, I was eating chocolate and cheesecake and whatever, and I just didn't care. And when people were just oh my gosh, you're getting crumbs on your dress, I would brush them off, and I'd be it washes. I can throw my entire dress in the wash if I wanted to, because I purposely used the materials that would be okay with that.
Yeah, even with the beads?
Well, I do a gentle wash, but yeah.
Okay.
I'd probably put it in a bag of some sort. to like protect it so it didn't get super agitated. But yeah, I'd feel very comfortable throwing the whole thing in the wash.
I don't feel like anyone else can say that. Like very few people can say I feel completely comfortable throwing my wedding dress in the washing machine.
I mean, it was just really comical when my stepmom was making a fuss because I had gotten chocolate all over my dress, little chocolate crumbs, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, like whatever, like trying to like pat them off, and I'm just like, stop, it washes.
I had people like, do you know there's a big hole in your dress? Are you okay? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. And you know what? I never fixed it. I'm like, that's a memory. It's fine. I really doubt any of my future children are going to want to wear this dress. So I'm just like, it's fine. It's good. It's a memory. So it helps.
So what
And
if you
I have
like,
that picture of that. I have that picture of that hole in that dress, and it's a nice memory. I even have a picture of when my husband clearly stepped on it. So I'm like, oh, that's when that was.
so like what have y'all done like with your wedding dresses since your weddings?
It's been in the closet.
Mine's in my son's closet right now. It's in a garment bag. It's just kind of shoved to the back, and it's there when I need it. I've reworn the petticoat a couple of times because the petticoat is what I also wore for my engagement photo shoot. And the idea was like, oh, I could use this, for future stuff. And I'm like, I want to limit it. I don't want to. I'll make a new petticoat. It's fine. Especially because I'm post-pregnancy now, so I'm like, that's not fitting me anyway. But it's kind of just stored in a bag upstairs, and it's there whenever I want to look at it, and I like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Mine is in my closet, and I haven't done anything with it yet. I didn't get a lot of pictures of me in my dress because I didn't do a bridal shoot, but I have been toying with the idea of like doing like seasonal fairies and making my wedding dress like my winter fairy.
Nice.
That's nice. I want to see that. That's gonna look amazing.
Yeah, and like do it with like, I don't have an idea like how I want to do it yet, and I need to like figure out the other seasons. But that's been an idea in my head for a while, and as I start doing like other things, like I want to get more use out of it. It's just more formal than I typically wear in a day. It would be fun to like wear to church one day, probably.
Yeah.
Like, why not? It's just a dress. It washes. One second. I'm gonna go grab my dress. I have to
do it.
So keeping mine in a closet probably isn't the best idea. I'm thinking about it, but oh well.
Nope. I couldn't fit into it.
No.
Sorry, I just
really
gave me a brain weasel, and I wouldn't have been able to settle until I like thought about it. I just actually looked at this thing in like years. Okay.
That's always nice. It's nice to get your wedding dress out every now and then. I know 2 different people where every year they take their wedding dress out and they put it on. One wore it even like when she was pregnant. Like she had it was a high-waisted dress, so like there was room for a bump, so that was nice. And then I know another couple, they get into their wedding clothes every year and they have a little photo shoot.
Oh, that's
No, right?
Yeah.
Altering wedding dresses is no joke. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I've done a few and I don't like it. Those dresses are not made like normal dresses.
They're not. I've watched, like we've talked, well, you've been altering wedding dresses, and I'm like, why?
Right. It's like, this doesn't make sense. Why would you do it that way?
Yeah.
And then you also have to like, you get a close look at some of them, and first off, you're just like, okay, well, the engineering alone is why this costs what it costs. But then like you get like, a good look at some of the hems, and you're like, oh, this isn't very neat. Like this is a pretty sloppy looking hem. Why would all right. So that actually kind of made me feel better about my work. So I'm just like, all right. So yeah, the thread hangs off. It's fine. That wedding dress cost a couple $1,000, and they were fine.
So when I first told like my mom I wanted to make it, I've had a butter I put out a built-in wedding dress pattern, and I actually bought it like when I was 10, and I like could not make this dress like when I was 10, but I've been like sewing, but like I could make like a pillow. I was not going to be able to make this very difficult. Like, it literally says very difficult on like the pattern itself. But I was so worried that it was going to like get discontinued, and I absolutely love Kate Middleton's dress so much.
It's gorgeous.
So I've like been holding on to this pattern forever. But like apparently I think my mom forgot that we had like bought that 10 years ago, because you know it's been like a decade. And she actually was like, I wasn't sure like how you were going to make it, or if you had a pattern already. So my mom's like the ultimate thrift shopper, like thrifting queen. And she found a wedding dress at a thrift store and bought it because it was super, super cheap. It was like, it looks like it's from the early 2000s, maybe the 90s. And she's like, well, I thought you could just like use this as like a pattern, and you could like take it apart and like try to like figure it out. And I started like going through it, and I was like, why is there just like a whole lining here, and then there's like these three things, and then like it doesn't have a hem, or it has like a 3-tiered hem situation going on. And I'm just like, wow. But I also want to like, basically my plan is when I make my dress is to tear the lining out of it and then just use that, because it already has like the poops, like the
crinoline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was gonna like tear that part out, and then it had like the horsehair trim braid that's not actually horsehair, but we call it that, but it's plastic.
There's something old.
Yeah. It has that in there, and I was like, well, that's a lot of money at Joanne, so I'm just gonna like tear that out. So I'm like, maybe like a little bit of like a thrift recycle situation as well.
I like
I was
it.
like, also this saves me work.
Absolutely. Save yourself work you can.
I made my own floofy tulle petticoat for my dress. Oh my gosh. Never. I say that never again. And then I made one for the Hobbit dress. That was even bigger. But like, it was insane. Like, but like, if you can like find something like that and like save yourself that much work, like by all means, have fun, go to town, do the thing.
I didn't have any tulle or crinoline in my dress.
Mm.
And like I still got like a nice A-line silhouette. I actually had the pattern right here. I used this pattern, and it gave me all the fullness I wanted. I didn't have to worry about horsehair braid or anything like that. It was very simple to make.
Yeah.
And I had some some pretty ruffles around the bottom when it twirled, but I didn't have to do some of the tricks that they have to do for wedding dresses to make them poofy.
Yeah.
And I was grateful. I didn't want any of that. I'm like, I don't want to deal with horsehair braid. I don't want to deal with crinoline. I don't want to try and figure out how to make this silhouette that I've never made before. So it helped.
That's good. And people always think of like the outside of the wedding dress, but then there's also like the inside, like the poofiness, the things like the lining, and like you never see those, but like they're so important.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, like when we do historical fashion-y things, they're just like costumes, and you have to have like, like the hoop or like the bum pads, like these like basically like, I like to call it like dress architecture that like goes under it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the reason how come we don't think about like the foundations of like modern dresses is because they're built into the dress these days. Mm-hmm. And so we don't think, like, when we think of, oh, I want a big poofy dress, like, all of that's already built into the dress. So we don't think, oh, I need a petticoat, and then I need the dress, because it's all the same thing these days, which is really unfortunate. I get why they do it. It's less bulk around the waist sometimes. It's sometimes more comfortable. But at the same time, it's just like, we've lost that connection.
Yeah.
Even though I do appreciate only having to buy one garment instead of like 4. That's kind of nice. But it's still, it does change the way you think, and you kind of just take it for granted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also bought like an extra petticoat in case I want more poof.
Yes. I approve. I mean, since my wedding dress was like the first like high femme fluffy dress that I have ever made, since then, like that's become like what makes my heart happy. I actually have one on my dress form right now that like is so floofy, and I haven't put the petticoat on it yet. And I'm just like so excited.
The idea that was the first one for you just kind of blows my mind, because that's what I associate with you now. I associate like princess core with you. So
yeah, that's like, yeah, that's definitely like, I spent like 90% of my life convinced I was a tomboy, like rough and tumble, like all this stuff. And like, because of that, like growing up, I had a lot of like really fun outdoorsy hobbies that I just don't do anymore because I don't live in mountains anymore. But like, it's really been like since 2019 is when I started like that really experimenting with like feminine clothing and expressing myself in a very feminine way. And I'm just like, yeah, this feels comfortable. And like, I'm really glad that I like had that opportunity to like make my wedding dress where it could like introduce me to like all of this really floofy stuff that I just never let myself explore anymore. Didn't let myself explore before then. But yeah, like that's just, it's what makes me happy. And like, I think because my dress made me so happy and I just felt so good wearing it, I just knew like kind of instinctually that like, yes, this is where my life is going to go now.
Oh, I like that.
Like, new beginnings, because that's what like weddings are. Oh, I love that.
I think my final bit of advice is never feel pressured to make your wedding dress. If it's something that you've never considered before, don't worry about it. If it's something where you're just like, I absolutely do not think I can handle this dress, don't do it. If it's something where like you get halfway through making yours and you're just like, I just can't, I am done, that's perfectly okay. Go find a different, like go get something else. I know we have a lot of really fun stories about making our own dresses, and we are obviously really passionate about it because it's something that we've done, but it's not for everyone. And like, I just want to like throw that out there. Like, don't feel like you're left behind or shamed or whatever, because like your experience is different than ours. I mean, I feel like in this panel alone, we've talked about like me and Melissa had completely different weddings, but we both had like things that were important to us and like the things that we wanted. So if making a dress isn't something you want, thanks for listening and go find a pretty dress.